I'm Amy, sex educator, somatic sex and relationship coach, and sex shop owner.
And I'm April, VP of an international high-end pleasure products company and boss queen sex toy mogul. We're best friends who make our own rules about who we are as sexual beings.
With everything from how to be a badass in the bedroom to top tips for bringing your relationship to the next level, we have something just for you.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com. Hey everyone!
Hi everybody!
It is episode, oh my goodness, 32, 33, I never know. I should
age.
Stop saying, is there a Jesus year?
This is your Jesus year, yeah? You're gonna be 33.
Almost, yeah. Oh. I'm a Pisces.
Oh, yay.
I should probably stop saying that in the beginning of each episode, but we are on episode whatever the fuck it is, and we have another guest speaker, and Happy New Year, people. We're recording this right after the New Year, but you're probably going to be hearing a little later. And so I don't want to forget to tell you all.
It's sober January for most people, not for me.
Yeah, right.
I'm entering trade show week, so it's going to be called Drunken January.
She loves her wine.
Oh, yeah. Why not?
Why not?
P.S. If you know anybody that wants to sponsor us with wine, we accept cases.
She just wants a case.
But it has to be decent wine.
None of that shit.
No.
She wants only the good stuff.
So who's our guest, Amy? Tell us about it, which I am so excited to have you on our show because you're amazing, and I've read your book. Well, I listened to it on Audible. I'm a lazy.
Do we call that reading?
See you next Tuesday. So I have people read your book to me.
Was it in his voice or was it in someone
else?
They wouldn't let me do it. It was really fucked up.
They wouldn't let you. Did they test your voice? And they're like,
good voice
nope,
for that
you're
too.
out.
I have a great. Yeah, no, they. I said to them, I've done voice stuff in the past. I'd be happy to read it for free.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we've got professionals.
We've got people.
We can hear your voice. We're not feeling you.
Yeah, no, it was. They never heard my voice. It was all emails. But then they let me do the preface.
Yes.
Just the part where the monkey attacks my ex-girlfriend, and I get all like apey about it.
Sounds like a joke. Don't get all apey about it.
Yeah.
April would be sometime. I don't even remember that story. I remember I read the book.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, should we tell you what we're talking about here?
and who we have on the show.
So we have a
the
doctor.
book is the Bible.
So, yes.
And I am God.
Yes, so we have God. God is here, and we are talking about the Bible. I don't know which version of it, but so we have Dr. Chris Ryan, who is the author of the book Sex at Dawn, here with us. I actually went on, I did a podcast with him on his show, Tangentially Speaking is his podcast, and I highly recommend it. It is, do you do weekly releases?
Yeah, at least sometimes twice a week.
Nice.
Yeah, and what would you say is the premise of your show? No premise, just tangents.
No premise. It's just conversations with interesting people.
Yeah.
Whatever. It ranges from sex workers to comedians to authors, scientists. Later today, I'm going up into the redwoods near here, Boulder Creek, to interview a super genius dude who works with NASA.
I know him, Dr. Bruce Damer.
Yeah,
I know
I'm going up to his place.
Oh my God.
How did you just assume that it was that guy?
Because he lives in Boulder Creek and works for NASA.
Oh
yeah, he's great. I love that man. He is Dr. Bruce is his fashion, by the way. It's like it's always Burning Man for this man, but he is the sweetest human. Yeah. He's brilliant. Are you gonna talk to him about aliens?
Talk to him about whatever. That's the point.
It's
just like you find a person you want to hang out with, and you go hang out and record it. That's the premise.
Tell him I said hello. I love him. He's such a great human, Dr. Bruce. And he lives in this area up in Boulder Creek that is supposedly just filled with a whole bunch of magic. Like everyone who lives there says that there's just he'll tell you about it. I'm sure. So it's like magical vortex. So
yeah. Going up in Scarlett Johansson. Probably spend the night up there.
Yeah, he's driving a van that's named Scarlett Johansson and
cute.
Cruising all over.
It's a red van.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
So you sleep in it?
I do, and I try to lure young ladies into it.
Yeah? Just young ones? That's it?
Hey, for me, young is like...
What is young considered?
65 and under.
He's an equal opportunist.
Yeah.
And then for our listeners who maybe have never heard of Sex at Dawn, can you give us a little info on a little summary of that?
Sexadon is a book I co-authored with my wife, Cacilda Jethá, who's a psychiatrist from Mozambique. And basically it's a sort of a cross-cultural look at human sexual behavior. And so it's looking at different cultures, particularly hunter-gatherer cultures. And also we look at primates. And what we're trying to elucidate in the book is the way our ancestors behaved sexually before the advent of agriculture. So before there were institutions like religion and government and different people telling us how we should behave. So basically it's sort of looking for what is human sexual nature. You know, what's our innate capacity and behavior. So that's what the book is. The sources of information, as I said, are anthropology, primatology, contemporary psychosexual research. So what sorts of things turn people on, what sorts of issues people go to therapists to deal with, what kind of porn is popular, you know, whatever. And then the fourth, and for me the sort of most surprising source of information was human anatomy. The way the design of the body reflects the behavior of our ancestors.
So we talked a lot about balls and cocks.
I know.
And the size from
Monkey
like the
balls.
silverback.
Monkey
monkey
balls.
balls.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. I learned a lot. I love the science information. Like there's so much scientific
And
information.
kind of the evolution of.
Well, the evolution, but also they talk so much about bonobos. And I don't know a lot about primatology, but I learned a lot in that book. I referenced bonobos before with you on this podcast. We talk about how we're so related and they don't rape each other because they live in like communal environments. And I don't know, that was something that I've shared with other people too, how we're so closely related to bonobos. But why do we rape? Because we have all of this, I guess, built up marital status now and people like, I don't know. I mean,
Power.
That's power. Well, yes. I mean, of course.
But okay, when you say, if you said that the bonobos, they don't rape each other, would you say that, I mean, most of them don't, or it's not like a regular occurrence the way it is in chimpanzee culture or maybe human culture, but I mean,
no bonobo has ever been seen to rape another bonobo.
Really? Wow.
In captivity or in the wild.
Wow.
There's also never been an observed case of infanticide or murder
I know.
of one bonobo to another.
And what do they
make
link
love.
that to? Why is that? It's because they live in communal environments and they're all.
Well, I wouldn't say that because lots of primates live in communal environments. Chimpanzees live in social groups, complex social groups.
But chimpanzees will rip your face off.
Yeah, they can. I mean, you know, chimpanzees are, it's interesting because as we talk about in Sex at Dawn, when Jane Goodall first got to Gombe and started observing chimpanzees, the first 3 or 4 years, she didn't see any violence at all. And she was writing about how peaceful and relaxed they are and, you know, how they had sort of social mechanisms for resolving anxiety and tension and so on. And those articles weren't getting much attention. And then and then what happened was she had graduate students coming to observe the chimps with her, and it's very difficult to follow the chimpanzees through the treetops because they swing from branch to branch, and you're down on the bottom hacking through thorns and, you know, undergrowth, and it's really difficult to keep up with them. So what they started doing was leaving fruit in an area where they would then like sort of position themselves to observe the chimps when they came in to get this fruit. And so think about how strange this is. Chimpanzees they eat widely dispersed fruit in the jungle. Now suddenly there's a lot of fruit in one place. Then they would leave the fruit at the same time every day. So of course the chimps quickly figured out like, oh, 5 o'clock there's going to be, you know, late afternoon there's going to be fruit there. So they'd start coming earlier, and they'd start like trying to break it out of the boxes that it was in. And these chimps are very strong, so they'd rip the boxes apart. So then they had to like keep making more reinforced containers for this fruit, to the point where they like poured concrete. They basically made a bunker, a fruit bunker, to keep the chimps out of the fruit until the assigned time for observation. Now again, what's this like for a chimpanzee? Chimpanzees have never smelled or seen fruit that they couldn't get at. That doesn't exist in the jungle. It's there in the tree, you go get it. So that introduced a lot of frustration. And it also introduced the equivalent of accumulated resources, right? So it changed their social functioning. So then neighboring chimps, groups of chimps started coming to try to raid to get this fruit, right?
Then they're at war.
So now they're at war.
Yeah.
And so she observes this violence that's happening between the chimps and the different groups of chimps, and she writes about this, and it's front page news. It's on the cover of National Geographic. You know, the primate origins of warfare have been discovered. You know, we're just chimpanzees. So a lot of the work that I do in Sex at Dawn and the book I'm writing now, it's about showing how narratives that are presented as science are often really politics.
Yeah.
It's really just a story that reinforces a view that is powerful for one reason or another, economically or philosophically or whatever, especially where it concerns human nature. So you hear all about chimps, you hear about their violence, even though they're not really that violent
Yeah, it's not
most of the
happening
time.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
But we
big
have this picture of like, they're ripping each other's faces off because we heard some woman in Connecticut had her face ripped off by a pet chimp 7 years ago. People shouldn't have fucking pet chimps anyway.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson and Bubbles.
And also that chimp, by the way,
Bubbles?
it was it named Bubbles?
Oh,
Michael
no,
Jackson's?
The face
Oh,
ripper?
no,
The
the
face
face.
ripper was, I don't know
The
name
face
of the
ripper in Connecticut. I may be wrong about this, but I think that chimp was on like some sort of psychoactive drug, like
Oh, so it had
antidepressants
problems.
or something.
It had some,
Or no, or it was something. It was on something that was supposed to.
for humans?
To calm it, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. There, I mean, you know, whatever. You have a chimp in your house, you get what you deserve.
Yeah.
But
It's true.
I don't mean to be
Sorry,
mean
face
to chimp
person with
lady.
no face.
Yeah, if she's listening.
Did she
Siento.
survive that? I don't remember.
I think so.
I don't know.
Just no face?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
But anyway, so
wait,
yeah,
are you-
so
are
we're
you saying-
equally related to chimps and bonobos.
But
That's
so
the
are you
thing.
saying
we're
that before
equally.
this whole
Equally,
thing
yeah.
with Jane Goodall introducing the fruit and then seeing the warfare, is it possible that so you're saying that the frustration, that the ability to go into frustration mode and be at war with each other was always there, but that just kind of sparked
triggered
it.
it.
so it's
triggered
always,
it.
it's always over resources,
Yeah.
basically.
Right.
And scarcity.
and that's the same thing with with scarcity of people's bodies, of
Right.
access to bodies, and of course it's not this like I don't have access, so I'm entitled to
But
taking.
why is it that, I don't remember why is it that, because it's been a hot minute since I've read the book, but there was a direct link of why bonobos aren't known to rape.
Right.
It was-
Well, Frans de Waal, the famous Dutch primatologist, said that chimps use violence to get sex and bonobos use sex to avoid violence. So
Okay.
he would argue, I think, and most experts would argue that bonobos use, and this relates to your availability point, bonobos have sex so often that the male frustration doesn't have a chance to build up because they're getting laid left and right. And the other thing that's really important, especially in this cultural moment, the whole Me Too movement, is that female bonobos stick together. So when a male gets aggressive, because males are bigger than females, as in chimps and humans. So when a male starts to get a little aggressive with a female, all the females will
And they'll be like,
attack him.
Nope.
Yeah. So males quickly learn, like, one, if you start hassling one female, you're going to get all the females, attacking you. And two, it doesn't pay anyway. Just like chill and be cool and you'll get laid. And it's fine.
Okay, everyone listening, just chill out. The pussy is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
There's enough for everyone.
You know what? On a
there
side
is,
note,
yeah.
with the Me Too thing, remember when that was happening? I was trying to think of a story. I was not like I didn't want to post me like, oh, I want to have a story, but I know something has happened to me. I know.
I got offered basically advancement for a date from a boss before, like advancement in employment and additional
work-
income.
Yeah.
Actually in Santa Cruz County when I was 24 years old. Yeah, and so I quit because I was like, excuse me? But that was the only thing that I could think of.
I
actually
had this,
but that's still kind of,
And
I
he
mean,
came
that's
right
quid
out.
pro quo.
He came right out and like,
He
like,
asked
I'll
me to
give you-
come into his office and he said, hey, I have to talk to you. And then he was telling me to fire my boyfriend. And then he said, do you want to go someplace in this company? And I said, yeah, of course. Like, I'm motivated. I'm ready. And then he said, well, you know, it would really be helpful for you to go on a date with me. Just one date. Just go out to dinner with me. And then he gave me, like, we were at a company event before this incident, and he was giving me hundreds and was like, hey, honey, go get me some drinks and buy yourself something too. I was like, okay, I'm not your assistant. I was totally in a different department, but he was the VP.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I can think of.
So I found it really interesting that I had this block that I couldn't think of this, because I did have something that was kind of traumatic-ish. I mean,
Yeah.
it actually was kind of really threw me
share?
off. Yeah, and it took me months. I was like thinking about it. I was like, I know something's happened, and it's not this repressed memory. It's something that I just haven't thought about in a long time. I guess that's what a repressed memory is. I don't know.
Well, you didn't attempt to repress it because was it extremely
No,
like,
no.
traumatic?
I mean, but it was. So when I was probably 13, I was at my friend's house, and we had a slumber party with a whole bunch of girls, and she has a twin brother. Dun dun dun. and always dangerous. And he had his one or two of his friends over, and you know, at night when we all went to sleep, they came into the room and we were all hanging out, and the lights were off, and so we were all in the room. She's in there and her brother's in there, and it was like the classic trick. But I was 13, and so didn't really understand. Maybe I was 12. I don't know. I didn't get the trick of like when he asked me to give him a massage. So I started giving him a massage on his
penile
back.
massage?
No, well, so it was a massage on the back, and then he said, "Okay, I'm gonna turn over. Can you give me a massage on my chest?" And so I started with his chest, and he like slowly just takes my hand, shoves it down his pants, and starts like jacking himself off with my
Whoa!
hand. His tiny little 13-year-old dick. It was
Damn.
bite size, and I remember going through the whole like the compliant thing of like I don't want to be doing this. I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing. I've never touched a penis before, and this is like the first way I'm touching one is by
Right.
someone just kind of taking my hand and using it as a jack-off device as if I'm not even here, which still baffles me. Like, why are you even using my
Yeah,
hand?
use your own hand. Then you know how fast or slow to go too.
Yeah,
So
there's
your little
something-
12-year-old's like hand.
Because my hand clearly wasn't like, yeah. it was like a dead hand. I was like, what are you doing? But I still didn't pull it away.
Okay.
I didn't say anything. I
Wait,
remember.
did he finish?
Yeah.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, he finished.
Oh,
It probably only
wow.
took like 1 minute. I don't know, but it was. I still left there just feeling like disgusted. You
did
know,
you wipe it on his face?
I should have,
Yeah.
but I wasn't that liberated and empowered. I was really confused. And the other
You're also
kind
a
of fucked up
teenager,
part
right?
is that this person used to kind of pick on me because I was of a lower financial status than his family. His family was a wealthy family. You know, the parents were doing big things, and they had a really nice house up in the suburbs. And he would literally criticize me for my clothes and things like that, literally, essentially saying, you're poor. And he continued to do that. He did that before that, and he did that after that. And so the combination of having this bullying with this person that this happened with, I think was also extra damaging.
Yeah.
And it was just felt like, and I was taller than him too, by the way, but like the man was coming down on me, and it was just, so anyways, I just thought it's interesting that it took me so long to remember that. It took me 3 or 4 months, and I was just in a conversation, and it just popped up.
Well,
And I was like, oh yeah.
but that time frame in life, I mean, there's people, actually, ayahuasca brings out like traumatic experiences for people that they've never remembered from when they were like 2 years old in the crib. But I've had mutual friends that have like gone through experiences that they didn't even know because you suppress it, or you just didn't remember because it was at a strange point in your life.
I did talk about this with my partner maybe 3 years ago, or maybe almost 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. So it has come up, but since then it just hasn't come up. So, so I just thought about that. It wasn't that I was fishing for something like, I want to be a part of the Me Too
So
movement.
did you say Me Too then?
No, because it just happened like 2 weeks ago. So I was like, I'm too late. I mean, I guess I could, but it wasn't because I wanted to be a part. It was because I knew that there was something in there. I was like, I don't have a perfectly clean slate in terms of my interactions with the world and in sexuality. And it's pretty clean compared to what a lot of people have gone through, and I just thought it was interesting how long it took me to go there.
And
have that
Chris,
aha
have you had
moment.
Me Too moments?
Have you even Me
Or a
Too?
moment?
I have had experiences that in the current cultural context would definitely be seen as that I was abused. But at the time I didn't feel abused.
Yeah.
You know, I had a babysitter who did some interesting things with me that I thought that I was totally into.
You're like the 10th person, male-bodied individual, I will say, that has had babysitter experiences, that has told me about it. It's so interesting. What babysitters are these? Where
do I get
know.
one of those?
No, I don't. That's scary. What is going on? So I'm sorry to interrupt you because I want to hear this, but that
he
is
enjoyed it. See, and so this is what
So
gets a little confusing here
right.
about it's all contextual, right? Like if someone, so one person's rule or law or idea about what's not okay doesn't apply to everyone.
Right. Yeah. And you know, people always say, well, what would what if that were your daughter? And it's like, well, that would be different. Daughters and sons are different. You know, if my uncle had tits, he'd be my aunt. I mean,
He'd be that's deep.
but yeah, no, I was 11 and she was probably 16 or 17 and something's buzzing.
Who's singing?
no, it's someone's
off.
car alarm. It's a car
It's a car alarm.
Oh, good.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, good.
And she, she was sexy to me, and I didn't understand why, right? So that was the main memory I have of it is like, yeah, I want to do these things, but I don't know why. And so there was this moment where she was sitting on the sofa watching TV, and I was coming back from the kitchen or something, and I was standing behind her, and I looked down her blouse, and I could see her breasts, and she turned around and looked up at me, and her boyfriend's name was Chris, and she said, she looked up at me and sort of smiled, and she said, you know, Chris likes to touch them.
And you're Chris. So.
And I was also Chris. Yeah. And I remember thinking like, okay, she's given me permission to do this. I want to do this, but I have no idea why I want to do this. And I mean, sex has always interested me in that sense. Because like, you know, there's always been the parallel between the physical hunger and then the intellectual reaction to the physical hunger. So I've always found sex to be very interesting in that way. You know, and then when I traveled through my 20s and 30s, and like sort of the central motivating question in my life was always, so what's distinguish the personal from the cultural from the species? Like what's human, what's American, and what's just me? You know?
Yeah.
And Joseph Campbell, this mythologist, a great writer and thinker, he talks about the process of detribalization being very important in the education of any sort of interesting person. And that what he means by that is first recognize that you're in a tribe, and recognize that your tribe believe certain things that aren't necessarily true, that are arbitrary, that are part of your tribal cultural identity. And then you start to sort of distinguish those things from universal truths, right? So, you know, racism is part of a tribal belief system, or sexism, or, you know, class things. I mean, there are all sorts of different things. Or in America right now, there are a lot of beliefs around sexual agency that are changing really quickly, you know, so the tribal identity can shift really quickly. I've spent most of my adult life living in Spain, so when I come to the US and see what's going on here, it's like deeply familiar because I grew up here.
Which part of Spain?
Barcelona.
Oh, I love Barca. I lived in Sevilla.
Sevilla's great.
Andalusia.
Yeah.
Flamenco, the birthplace. Sorry, but I love
Yeah.
that. I love Spain.
Spain.
It's my happy place.
Yeah, I love Spain. And it's very different, as you know,
So
culturally, sexually.
That's
you
the thing.
know.
I'm usually attracted to the Latin kind of culture. Like for me, dating Americans was unthought of
Until now.
until now. And I'm like, sometimes I look at him and thinking to myself, you are so American.
Yeah.
White bread.
Wow.
I meant like Wonder Bread is what I meant when I said that, everyone. Said that wrong.
And your wife is from Spain?
No, she's from Mozambique.
Oh,
in
Mozambique.
Africa. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But she grew up partly in Mozambique, partly in Portugal.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, she's very multicultural. Her family, her origins are mostly from India.
Oh, wow.
But like I think her grandparents' generation or maybe great grandparents went to Africa. So she looks like exotic, nondescript, like could be Brazilian or, you know, Latina or maybe Asian, not clear. Her mother was Muslim, her father was Hindu. So she had that mix, but in Africa. And she was raised mostly by the African people who worked for the family, because she's quite a bit younger than her siblings. So her family were all busy. And so
She had no pair that looked after her?
Well, in Africa, it's more like, you know, they're, especially in an upper class family, like they were, you know, you've got a dozen different people working at the house, and, you know, a lot of them lived there. So,
Right.
yeah, and then they lost everything in the war. She was 13. She was a war refugee. I'm trying to convince her to write
What war?
her memoir. The War for Independence of Mozambique. They were a
Wow.
Portuguese colony. And then there was a civil war, a really nasty civil war. The country's still full of landmines
Oh,
because
wow.
of it.
Oh my gosh. So she probably speaks Portuguese, what else? Spanish?
Yeah, she speaks 7 languages.
7.
Yeah.
I wish my brain had that capacity, the linguistic capacity to retain language. Like, I just cannot remember languages. Maybe it's all the ecstasy I did in my early 20s.
Bad call. Yeah.
Damn it. That's what Amy always tells me. She's like,
It's the ecstasy.
getting rid of your, yeah.
I know. I think I just got rid of my ecstasy era. When I was 25, did a little too much of that, and I feel like the cells have finally regenerated at 32.
I still have a permanent jaw click from all the grinding I did. Can't eat bagels with me. That just makes terrible noises.
I was thinking of writing a memoir someday, and one of the possible titles I thought of is Blame It on the Ecstasy.
Blame it on the ecstasy.
I was just talking about that the other day. Someone was talking about how when they're on ecstasy, that, you know, of course, like they make some poor choices in the moment. It feels right, including, this person that's my friend, yeah, I'm really attracted to them right now. This feels good, and then they start making out. Wow, I never knew that there was this sparks here. There's something here. Go to sleep, wake up the next day. Just kidding. Nope.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Why?
Not it. Everything just looks extra sparkly. I've had those moments there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but this is I would like to ask a question that is very much related to what you were saying. About the cultures and context, and I like how you broke it down from human to tribe to you. I want to ask you about shame, and I think April and I were talking about this as if shame is a universal experience, if every culture experiences shame in regards to they shame others, or people feel shame and they alter their behavior based on what the culture tells them is acceptable and what you.
Especially since
with it.
in
Yeah.
certain countries you can marry a 9-year-old child, or as soon as she becomes a woman with her menstruation. In this country, we definitely shame people as pedophiles or as, I don't know. That's something that I always think about culture. We've talked about this before in a podcast, but I'd love to get your
I think shame exists in all cultures that I'm aware of. But that doesn't mean that it is associated with the same things in every culture, right? So the main thing that shame is associated with in hunter-gatherer cultures, which are pretty universal. So if we're talking about, you know, the Inuit in Alaska, or cultures in the Amazon or Papua New Guinea or Aboriginal people in Australia, there are universalities across them. One of them is that they're highly egalitarian in terms of sharing resources. And so shame is used to stop people from accumulating too much. So if you're a hunter and you come back with a deer and you want to share it only with your woman, then you're going to be shamed for that. You're expected to share with everybody all the time. Or if people start to get like big egos, there's something called insulting the meat, which happens in many cultures, so the hunter will, he's killed this big thing, and then he'll come back and ask other men to come and help bring the animal in, right? And so there's all this ritual around it where the hunter will come back and say, just sort of sit by the fire quietly until someone says, so how'd it go? And he'll say, well, yeah, I shot something, but I don't know, it's old and skinny and whatever, but maybe you can help me bring it in. And they'll be like, oh, right, geez, I don't know. And then everyone will sort of complain, and then they'll go, and it's this like a big, impala or something. And then it's fantastic. Everyone's really happy, but the whole time they'll be like, yeah, I don't know why he asked us to help you with this. I mean, this is so scrawny, you could have brought it yourself.
Even though they're eating and happy, but
right. Yeah. So I remember reading this account from an anthropologist who had been living with some people in, I think, the Kung San people in Botswana, in the desert there, the Kalahari. And when he was leaving, he wanted to make a gesture to thank them for, hosting him for all the time. So he went and he found like the best cow in the area, and he bought this cow and he brought it and was going to do this big feast. And the whole time everybody was like, well, really? I don't think that's going to feed everybody. I mean, it's kind of a shame to even kill it. Like, what are we going to eat? The skin? It's just like pissing on this, this whole thing. And he got really hurt until somebody took him aside and said, hey man, look, this is how we do it.
This is how it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reason is that the way it was explained to him is, he said, if somebody starts to feel like a great hunter, then we need to cool their heart because they become dangerous.
Make them humble. Humble them down. Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
So shame is used, I would say, most universally to just chill people out. If they start to get too big for their britches, start to act like, hey, I'm in charge here. No, you're not. This is a consensus society. Nobody forces anyone to do anything. And so that's what will happen. There are different stages of social control, and shame and ridicule is the first one. If that doesn't work, then like the shaman or somebody with a sense of authority, and authority, by the way, is granted by the people. It's you can't just say, I'm the boss, do what I say. Because think about it, everybody's armed. Everybody is, can shoot really well at 50 yards away. So it doesn't matter how big you are, how smart you are, whatever, you get shot in the back if you become a pain in the ass. And everyone depends on everyone else. So that's really important. So first, ridicule and shame, joking about, oh, Amy thinks she's really great. You say, oh, look at Amy. Amy's so cool. And then if Amy doesn't get the message, then somebody takes you aside and says, hey, you gotta, the gods don't like what you're doing. That doesn't work.
They shoot you.
You have a
one opportunity.
You have an accident.
Yeah. An accident.
Oops.
She didn't humble down, so she fell down the well.
That makes sense. I grew up in a very shaming, Wisconsin, the Midwest. I don't think everybody's getting the same shame, but talking about sex or, drugs or anything openly was really not accepted.
See, I think,
any level.
Yeah, and you're making me think I should make a distinction too, because there's shame as somebody saying to you, like, you need to calm down, or you're, that kind of controlling, social control shame.
You're too much.
Right. But then there's the shame of, I'm ugly, my body's horrible, the sort of original sin shame.
I'm a slut.
I'm a slut because I think things, I had that dream.
I've had sex with more than one human, or I had sex when I wasn't married, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, so that's, well, but see, then again, that's a social control shame. I'm thinking about shame that's just like, I'm bad.
Oh, yeah.
Not because anyone told me necessarily, just because I'm human.
Yeah.
And a lot of Judeo-Christian religions sort of start with the belief that you're born disgusting.
Yeah.
And just by being an animal, the parts of you that are associated, that are bodily because they're animalistic.
They're dirty,
they're dirty, they're horrible, they're corrupt. That original conception, that doesn't exist in hunter-gatherers.
Okay. So that one you're saying wouldn't be a universal.
No, that's not. So it's
you're-
only
like, you're not-
only
you're-
the shame that serves a social purpose of keeping people peaceful and in line. That exists.
interesting.
But
It is
not,
interesting.
not I'm disgusting, because I'm
Because I'm human.
'Cause I have a body,
Because I
yeah.
have genitals, and because I think these.
Yeah.
I ask this question a lot when I teach workshops. I ask if you imagine if you were born and lived a couple years and no one had ever told you who you should or shouldn't be as a sexual being, what would you be like? And most people have no clue what that looks like, except they think that they'd be more free and expressive. But because most people, at least in American culture, have received so many messages that have told them. And so what you're talking about is kind of more of the there's the conformist thing of just changing. There's certain parts of me that need to shift because they've been shamed. And I think it is really, really common for people to think that they're broken and that there's something wrong. Just the fact that we're cutting people's bodies when they're born, like that already, that we're, the circumcision just blows my mind that we're already like, there's something wrong with you.
Only
And we
1%
need to
of the world's
change it.
population, though, does that, and it's usually the
It's
United
here.
States.
It's so common.
Which is funny.
I mean, I
because-
still know plenty of women that when they see an uncircumcised penis, they freak the fuck out because they're not used to it. They're still programmed to think it's disgusting and
I know,
dirty.
which is so weird
Yeah.
that we were programmed to
But
think that.
but I mean, this practice that's happening.
I'm like, why wouldn't you want your own personal masturbation sleeve?
Yeah. I mean,
Why
come
wouldn't
on.
you?
Or some Uber lube. I don't know. Come on. Oh, wait, but it makes its own lube.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly,
It's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So it just
I'm
blows my mind.
Switzerland, though, with it. I try to say Switzerland.
I try
I'm an
to say
equal
Switzerland too.
opportunist.
I say this because I want people to just question the fact when it comes to shame, and that we're already training young people from day one that there's something wrong with them from the start, and that they're dirty, and we need to clean them up by cutting off a piece of them. And so whatever you want to do, and I think that just contributes to the idea that
I was married to an Israeli Jew for a long time, and he was dead set on the fact that circumcision was the cleanliest way to go for penises. And I said, there's no real
You also
proof.
thought you could get an STD from a cave. He did. We were driving by a cave once in Israel, or somewhere, and he was
No, it was
like,
in Israel. No,
Oh, it was in Southern California.
It was in Palm Springs.
Yeah, he said, I heard you can get STD from cave.
from a cave.
From a cave. He said there's these Bedouins and they get STD from cave. And Amy was like, pretty sure that's not true. And I said, what STD can you get from a cave? I don't know, but it's bad rash.
Cave chlamydia.
The clap from the cave.
Oh, that's
Is
good.
the clap chlamydia though?
I
No,
thought it
it's
was
gonorrhea.
gonorrhea.
I always call the clap chlamydia.
It
Not that I've had it.
Sounds like
like
it. Yeah.
The first time I had sex with a Spanish woman, she looked at my dick and said, "Oh, this is the first time I've been with a circus-sized man."
Circus.
Oh, that's good. Well, you must have a huge dick.
Oh,
Yeah.
just or
Why
a
did
midget.
Or
But why
freakishly
did,
small.
why did Americans decide? What was it? Where did that come from? That it was the best.
Was it Kellogg? Or
It was the
John?
anti-masturbation
Yeah.
frenzy of the late 19th century.
Oh,
Yeah,
was
we
it?
read about this in Sex at Dawn. That
Yeah.
there was the war on masturbation was intense. It was like the war on drugs now.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, it's people were told that by authority figures like Kellogg that masturbation led to insanity, nerve disorders, all sorts of death eventually, or organ failure, and so they thought they were doing the right thing by making sure their kids didn't masturbate, and so one thing was circumcision. In boys that weren't circumcised, Kellogg recommended that the foreskin be sewn closed with silver sutures and done without anesthesia.
Oh my!
Wow.
Right. So the boy would associate. Now, the fact that boys get erections every night when they sleep.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
And
That's torture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also had penis cages. You guys have seen these, I'm
The
sure.
chastity.
Now we
they're
see them,
chastity penis
more
devices.
for dominance and submission.
Well, no, but these have like spikes in them.
Oh, Jesus.
So if you get an erection, your penis like hits the spikes.
Wow.
And that doesn't, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess an erection will go down but right away, but that doesn't teach your body not to have erections necessarily.
No, 'cause
Right?
it's a
still
natural
going to
thing,
do it.
especially
it
when
does
you're
it when you're
sleeping.
asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife Cacilda, she's very good at making erections go away. She can show you.
That's a compliment. Wait, do you want to elaborate on that story?
I'd been with her for like a couple of years, and we were hanging out with this goofy friend of ours, and we were getting high, and he was talking. Oh, because she had never smoked weed or had a drink or anything. She was like super good girl until she met me, and the things went south really quickly. And so we were getting high, and we were laughing about how because she started smoking when she was 40.
Wow.
And she went through the same things that we all go through, like that really giggly phase for the first couple of years, which I always
the
thought.
good old days.
I love those days.
Yeah, I thought it was because we were kids, but it turns out it's just because you just started smoking weed.
Yeah.
So she was giggly as fuck. Like she couldn't stop laughing, for, extended periods. Anyway, so my friend was just laughing. He's like, Cacilda, you're so innocent. You're just starting out in life. Like, you've only been with like what, your ex-husband and this guy? You're so innocent. You probably think Chris has a big dick. And Cassie said, "Oh no, I've seen over 1,000 penises." And we're like, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, I told you I did that research in Africa for the World Health Organization about penises." I was like, "No, you didn't, bitch." And she's like, "Yeah, I told you. I had to measure 1,000 penises." Like, what?
Measure 1,000 penises.
In Africa? Are you kidding? That's like from here to the airport, like penis. You line them up. But anyway, she was talking when she was a young doctor. She was doing this research, and it was about STDs in Africa, and this is like very early AIDS days, and so she had to inspect the genitals of 1,000 men and 1,000 women as part of this research. And my friend was fascinated. He's like, "Well, but wait, you're like, these guys pull their pants down and you're like looking at their dicks?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, didn't they must have gotten turned on,
And she's
right?"
handling the dicks.
She's handling
you're,
it,
like,
and she's
measuring
like
it.
this smoking hot 25-year-old,
Doctor?
mixed race doctor. And I don't blame him. And she's like, "Oh yeah, you just like flick it." And she showed like you just flick right in the front of the head, and it goes right down.
She was dick flipping.
She's a dick flicker.
Everyone, we just learned a powerful tool. If you need to get an erection, just flick it.
Yeah, she's
Wow.
She's seen a lot of
So
D's.
what?
she's
did
flicked
she,
a lot of dick.
She's flicked a lot.
What country does she know? What country has the average? I heard the Congo has the largest.
Lengthwise or girth?
Lengthwise. Lengthwise, like the average is 6.2 inches.
Really?
Yeah, and then Jamaica's second.
Where did you hear this?
It's a whole map of the world
Of penises?
of penis sizes per country, and
I wonder whose job it was to do that.
I don't know, but my an industry friend sent it to me because I sell masturbators. So I was like, "You should look at this map."
Yeah.
But I wonder if she has the same. I don't know if it's changed over the years.
Well, I know the racial differences, but as far as country, that would be interesting, because there are different tribes in different countries and lots of, mixtures.
Right.
But yeah, black guys tend to have longer dicks than white guys, who then tend to have longer dicks than Asian guys.
Yeah.
But the way, I find this whole thing kind of strange, because the way they measure it is they take a flaccid penis and pull it to its length, as far as you can, and measure it. And I'm telling you, you can take my flaccid penis and pull it, and that's not the same.
Totally
Yeah.
different.
So it's
So
one of
they're
these.
saying when it's flaccid and you pull it, that's the same as it would be when it's hard?
That's the assumption, but that's not the case, at least not with mine. So I haven't pulled a lot of flaccid dicks in my day. I think this is one of these cases that happens often in science, and this I referred to this earlier, like how politics is often masquerading as science. I think often also what we do in science is we measure what can be measured, and we ignore that which can't be measured conveniently, and then we just extrapolate and act like that's valid, but it really isn't. So for example, in sexuality research, I'm sure you guys have thought about this, like so much of the research on, you know, 35% of women report never having orgasm during intercourse, and 60% rarely. Well, who are those women? Those are undergraduate American college students, right? When
studying,
I read that stat to Cacilda when we were working on the book, and she was like, "What? No, that's because it just said women," and she's like, "That's not women. That's American." And then I looked and it's like, oh, she's right. All this is American graduate students doing research on American students. One of the most sex negative cultures in the world. These are 20, 21-year-old girls who are sitting in Psych 101 class under fluorescent lights at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning filling in a questionnaire. That's not accurate. You can't extrapolate from that to women.
Yeah.
What about 40-year-old women in Brazil?
Yeah.
How many of them are coming when they fuck?
Yeah.
Right?
Or 40-year-old American women who have had more time to figure out what their body likes.
Exactly.
Become more empowered.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's cultural, it's age, what time of the month. Women are more likely to have an orgasm when they're ovulating than when they aren't.
There's way too many variables, I think, to have a total standard.
Yeah, I especially ever since I had that thing with the IUD too, and I had the IUD. Of course, I got pregnant with the IUD and had an abortion, and got another IUD, and started having all these symptoms. My face was breaking out. My body felt really bloated.
Because you got the copper one.
Same thing though. That's what I had before,
one?
Copper. So I talked to my doctor, and the doctor's like, it can't be the IUD, but it's not the IUD. The IUD doesn't do that. Because even that's how they're educated. And everything to me is feeling like it's run by pharmaceutical companies. It's all based around money or what someone's personal experience or a small group of people's personal experiences. And then we get that information and believe that it's true and it's fact and it's the same for everyone. And I used to be such a believer in science and in research studies and things, and I still look at research studies, and I take everything. I definitely am looking at everything and with more questions and then the bigger picture, because that was so frustrating. And then the minute I get the IUD out, problem solved. But if you talk to any Western doctor, they would never say that.
Think about certain drugs or like ozone, which is illegal in this country, but you can actually cure cancer with it. Like Anthony Kiedis used it to basically cure his Hep C, and you have to inject it, and it's literal ozone. But it's not really legal in this country because the pharmaceutical companies want to make money off their every single ailment with a pill. So if you have any disease, try the ozone. Go to Mexico, shoot it up.
Shoot it up.
I'm fairly certain it almost cures everything from cancer to Hep C.
Yeah,
I've been researching it.
Yeah, we are such a repressed.
Although it's nice to see changes. I didn't think I'd live to see legalized marijuana.
I know. And now have you gone you can go to dispensaries now.
Yeah.
And go buy whatever you want.
Weed.
I've had a card for years.
Yeah, but you don't need it now. I wonder if they're just overflowing with people now that it's open and it's a free for all. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Like it was in Colorado years ago.
Yeah. In Amsterdam forever.
I know.
I have a question for you, Chris. How did you meet your wife? Like, did you use a pickup line?
No, I met her at a transpersonal psychology conference in Portugal.
Oh.
Yeah.
And did you speak English with her when you met her, or do you speak?
Yeah, we speak English or Spanish.
Or Spanish, because she speaks 7 languages, which is incredible. And that's the language that you use to communicate with each other, English mostly?
Or Spanish, yeah.
Or Spanish.
Because we lived in Spain together for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Or more. I don't know. No, 17 years. What am I saying? Yeah.
So what, did you have a drink with her? You saw her from across the room with her long
spit any lines?
Yeah. No, I'll start tearing up if I tell that story. It's but basically we saw each other at this conference, and it was just there was a very strong sense with her of like there was no effort required. It was all just like everything just was waiting to fit into place.
Do you believe in like that twin flame soulmate kind of life partner thing?
I think probably there are many soulmates, and there are many good relationships that you could have, and there are many people you can love. So I don't believe there's like one person out there. I think there are a lot of people and a lot of paths that are all legitimate and interesting and beautiful, and so I don't believe in that. But I do believe that there are spirits that we encounter that you can just feel immediately comfortable together, and like this just is good. And I feel that with male friends of mine, I feel that in non-sexual situations. I feel that with, I have a friend who's 85, and like the day I met him, it was like, oh, we're gonna be friends, forever. You just feel it. It just, whatever, it's there. And it was there with her. So no, there's no pickup line. There's never ever been any sort of.
You want hey, you want to measure my dick?
I got this erection. Could you get rid of it?
Can you flick it?
Yeah, help me.
I'm feeling something.
I'm trying to take it down a notch.
Take it down a notch. I got this circus-sized dick. You might be interested in.
We still don't know what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really easy. No, I never used pickup lines. I never was a dating dude kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through a period about 6 years where I was promiscuous as hell, but I wasn't ever. And the best thing I ever did as far as meeting women was when I finally recognized that I was non-monogamous and like thought of that as a concept, and stopped blaming my girlfriends for my restlessness. Like up until I was maybe 30, I would be with a woman and was really happy and, whatever. And then I'd start to get restless and, think about other women. And the way I sort of intellectually metabolized that thought was I thought, well, it's because she's not as smart as, I really need, or she's not that funny, or, in bed, it's not exactly the way I like it, or, whatever. There's always some flaw in her, and that's why I wasn't happy just with her. And it didn't occur to me until, around 30 that it's like, no, it's not her, it's me, and it's not reflective of any problem with her. It's just like I sort of looked at my life, and it's like, dude, you're 30 years old, you've lived in like 16 countries, and you haven't stopped for more than a year. Why would you think that one woman is going to be the one if you can't even pick a continent? And so then it started to make sense that. So what I did, and that's when I did my research in graduate school about human sexual behavior in prehistory, and I started reading all the stuff about humans not being monogamous by nature, and which isn't, for people listening to this, it's not an argument that there's anything wrong with monogamy or that there's anything even unnatural about pair bonding, because our species does seem to pair bond naturally. But what I argue in the book is that it's not our nature to have sex with only one person for a lifetime. Just like it's not our nature to only like one artist or one musician or one kind of food, or it's like we're gregarious and omnivorous by nature, and so that applies to lots of different parts of life. But you can choose what to do about it. The line I used in the TED Talk was, just because you've decided to be a vegetarian doesn't mean bacon stops smelling good. So choose not to eat bacon if you want, but it's still going to smell good, and don't blame yourself for it.
Yeah.
Right. That's the shame.
Yourself, yeah.
I think
right.
monogamy probably made sense before people started living until they were 100. Like, great, I have to marry. Well, you don't have to marry this person, but for me, that's the forever mentality is really difficult, because I think like when people used to live to their 40s maximum, maybe it made more sense to be monogamous, and you just...
Wasn't the belief that it's actually not even true that people used to die, people actually did live long lives? Didn't you write about that?
I don't know.
You did write about that.
So good,
yeah.
so I want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, the belief that Now, see, people did die earlier in like medieval times,
Right.
where there were like huge infectious diseases and the plague and all this stuff. But as far as primordial humans, hunter-gatherers, our species typically lives into their 70s.
Really?
Yeah. Now, the reason that we have been told that the average longevity was in the 30s or 40s is that statistically, you can argue that if you look at infant mortality, up to almost half, like 47% of kids died before 15. So when you take that and you mix it, statistically, you average out, if that many kids are dying that young, then the average comes down. So because of that, the average lifespan is 40, 35, 40, whatever. But that doesn't mean people died at 40. Nobody was ever old at 40 in our species. So, and again, that's an example where people who, archaeologists have known this forever, but it's become this popular belief that, I've taught classes in medical school where the doctors believe this.
Right.
And it really misinforms a lot of medicine, because I've heard doctors say, well, the reason people have back pain is that we weren't designed to live this long.
That's what I always thought. I thought Alzheimer's and dementia, because our brains weren't
But see, that's
designed
bullshit.
to live as long. Good to know. I love
it
learning.
continues to be promulgated because it's satisfying for people in our society to say, oh, we live twice as long. Oh, yeah, we've got all these problems. And
Let's just go blame it on that. Yeah, other thing. Yeah.
Well, blame it on that. And also, like, you can say, well, we're fucking up the planet and, there's a lot of poverty and but hey, we live twice as long. You can't argue with that. But it's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not true. So.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So then,
But what I was saying earlier, and for people listening to your I don't know how many men listen to your podcast, but
47%.
47.
that we know of.
That we know of.
But the best thing that ever happened for me in terms of dating was when I stopped trying to present myself as what I thought women wanted to see. And I thought, like, when I was like, oh shit, this is me, this means I'm never going to have a significant relationship with a woman again, because no one will want that. No one will put up with that. But I'm not going to lie. I'm going to this is who I am. So it's kind of like coming out of the closet in a way, like, oh shit, I'm gay. Whoa, wait a minute. And so when I was doing the research, so when I met women, the first thing we talk about was, what do you do? Oh, I'm in grad school. What are you studying? Human sexual behavior and prehistory. Oh, what's that about? Well, we weren't monogamous. We're not meant to be monogamous, naturally. Half the women would be like, oh, okay.
See you later. Yeah.
But the half who stayed were really interesting and really smart and open-minded and like, what's this mean? Because I kind of felt that way, And so first thing that it did was it eliminated women that it was really not worth time to spend getting to know anyway. And the second one is it filtered it down to women who are open-minded and interesting. And resonated with this. So I ended up hooking up with far more women when I stopped trying to
get women.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. When it's
By
like,
just
hey,
being you and talking about what your purpose is.
This is it. Yeah, this is what I believe. Take it or leave it. I don't care. And it worked much better. So when I talk to young guys, that's what I try to tell them is like, find your non-negotiables and don't negotiate. Because the truth is, in my experience, women, above any other quality in a man, they respect authenticity. And so if you know who you are, be that. And then everything else works out.
Yeah. Oh, this is a good little segue into some things that you and I have talked about before, and April and I have discussed as well, is specifically with men and authenticity, but I think for all people and authenticity as well, is that, and I like what you're saying, is that women are really attracted to authenticity because I think beneath it too is safety, right? If you're authentic, if you're real, and if I can trust that you're fully in your power as who you are, then I feel safe with you.
Right.
And then that safety, safety helps with everything, with sex, with desire, with attraction, with if someone doesn't, and then there's the whole bad boy thing, and this is really funny. I was reading this book that my partner had, and he had ordered this from the back of a magazine in 1995. It's a magazine that was for 13, 14-year-old boys. It was just called Girls, and it doesn't even say who the author is. It's some anonymous person who's essentially like, this is what I found that works for me to get girls, and this will work for you too. And it essentially starts with, the first thing is, lie to them. You have to be the rebel. You have to be the bad boy. They're only attracted to that. So tell them that you used to have a drug addiction, but you've recovered and you went to rehab, and pretend like you're in a fight with your dad when you're on the phone with her, and yell at him and swear at him so you look like a badass, and lie to her and pretend like you have all these other girlfriends and all these other things going on, and
don't call them back.
Yeah,
if they call
and
you.
even insult her to put her in her place so that she doesn't think that she has more power over you. And this is what young boys were reading. So the message, there was, I mean, I'm not even talking necessarily about the power piece of like, you need to have more power over her. But this idea of can't show who you really are. You need to put on a show to be something else so that you can get the pussy. And because if you don't, you won't.
Well, and there's the female equivalent to that was a huge bestseller. What was that called? Because it was all about like, don't ever call the guy back, you know, in the first 3 days.
What
and,
was it?
You know, he has to spend so much more money, you know, per date. It was a big bestseller like 15 years ago or something. It wasn't The Secret. It was before The Secret.
I just keep thinking of the book, maybe he's not that into you. Just such a terrible thing of like, just get over it. Yeah, I don't remember which one is the female club.
But it was the same
the
thing.
Same game playing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that goes across the board. Is you can't seem too desperate. You can't show them you're too interested. You can't be honest about how you feel.
Well, but what I find interesting about these techniques, and I see you've got a copy of The Game on the table here.
April's been reading The Game.
Neil Strauss is actually a good friend of mine.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, which is strange.
Is he cool?
He's really cool.
But someone said that there's a second version that's a whole 180.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started reading the book and it was difficult for me, but when I was single, I was trying to stay ahead of the game. No pun intended.
She ordered it because there was someone that you were sleeping with.
Yes.
Yeah, who was a big fan of this, who had read this and said that they had told people
it was like his Bible.
This is their Bible of how they relate to women.
Right.
And so you're like, well, if I'm sleeping with this person, I need to be one
step. Stay ahead of them. It's like chess.
Yeah.
Stay a couple moves ahead.
Yeah.
But I only got to about page 25, 28.
But that's the modern day version of what this Girls would be.
Yeah, what is that book? I'm trying to think of it.
For women? Oh, I'm talking about Girls, the one that was for men, for young boys. But
Girls.
This one was.
Well, you know, when I met Neil, so the way it happened, I was working on Sex at Dawn, and this guy came by my place, this tattoo artist I knew, and he was like, dude, you're writing a book about sex. You should read The Game. I was like, what's that? He's like, it's this book about like the science of how to pick up women and like, well, like what? And he said like, like negging, you know, like you know, and he explained to me what negging was. You know about this, right?
I don't.
You're looking blankly.
I am,
I figured you'd be like, oh yeah,
what
negging.
Is negging?
So negging is when you, for example, you're in a bar and there's like 3 women and one of them's super hot and the other's not so much, and so you walk over and you ignore the hot one.
Okay. I don't know how to name.
This happened to us in Vegas. a few years ago.
Yeah. Someone's like, that was.
Yeah.
So there's that, and or there's like, you know, that blouse is really nice. Everyone's wearing it these days. Or, you know, you'd look really pretty if your hair were shorter. You know,
yeah.
Like the kind of thing where it seems like you're saying something nice, but you're knocking her off her balance a little bit. And I guess the idea then is that she'll want to prove something by like, you know, well, who the fuck are you? And I can get you, and you know. Anyway, so he explained this to me, and I was like, dude, that is the opposite of what I'm trying to do here, you know, with this book. This is all about not doing that bullshit. So then Sex at Dawn came out, and big surprise to me, it was like I was doing all this media. I did everything. I was like waking up at 3 a.m. to do late night trucker radio out of Kansas, you know, whatever. I'd do whatever. And I was really getting tired, and after like a month or something, I got an email from Neil Strauss's assistant asking me to be on his radio, Sirius XM, you know, thing with 1 million listeners or whatever. So a big thing. And I thought, you know what, I have to say no to someone. I'm going to say no to this guy. because it's not going to go well anyway, you know, because I'm just not that, right? And then a few months later, he was having lunch with a woman I know, and she said, "Oh, you should talk to Chris Ryan. He wrote this book." And Neil was like, "You know, I tried to get that guy on my thing, and he's the only person who's ever turned me down."
Oh,
and she's
you
like,
played the game on him. You
"Yeah,
gamed him.
I negged him."
So he wanted you more.
He did. And so
great.
I was moving to LA, and I was driving down, and actually we did a Skype interview. He interviewed me for his book, The Truth, that came out recently. And we got along really well, and I was surprised. Like, wow, you're not a bad guy, actually. I thought you were this manipulative little asshole. And anyway, he's a good guy. And so I was driving down to LA, and I get this email saying, "Hey, I see you're headed to LA. Follow me on Instagram or whatever. What are you doing tomorrow afternoon? Or will you be in town?" I was like, "Yeah, I get in tomorrow." He said, "You want to go to Moby's birthday party with me?"
Whoa, nice.
So my first day in LA, I dropped off my stuff, took a shower, and drove to Hollywood Hills
Go to Moby's birthday.
to Moby's birthday party with Neil.
Welcome to LA.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. And I thought it was going to be like hookers and coke, you know, like, and I get there, I didn't know Moby's like sober, vegan.
It's like tea party.
Yeah, I mean, I show up with a
Vegan treats.
6-pack, and the guy's like, "No, you want to leave that in your car." And I'm thinking, "Oh, it's catered, cool." Yeah. No, it was like family friendly, puppies
Kids are running
and
around.
children.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah,
You're like, LA's boring.
yeah. This place sucks.
But everybody's really, really good looking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Healthy.
yeah.
Healthy.
That was interesting. So anyway, Neil and I have become friends, and our mutual friend Kyle has been surfing with him for the last 4 months, like teaching him to surf, and yeah. So
And he's taken a turn. What inspired him to?
well, see, the game isn't. It really isn't a book about how to pick up women. It's a book about these guys in that world. And the way Neil explains this is that is a book about male insecurities and inabilities to deal with women, and the lengths they'll go to try to figure out how to get close to women. It's not a how-to.
See, our friend totally read it as a how-to.
Yeah,
So it's Bible.
think
That's how most people do.
But he
Yeah.
was like a really nerdy guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
That had issues picking up women.
That's it.
And so
right.
he decided to go rogue on it and figure out.
Well, so the first thing he did, I mean, when Neil and I met in person, we were talking about this, and he was like, "Look, you got laid before you were 16, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I can always tell." And he said, "You can always tell. Guys who like had early successful contact with girls are relaxed around women. Guys like me who didn't until they were in their 20s will never be relaxed around women."
Yeah.
So we don't know how to do it. It doesn't come naturally. So we need to learn techniques. And people who are like angry at me for talking about techniques, like, how is that any different than women who do their hair and wear makeup and get a boob job and wear like these clothes look good on her, and you know, they're sort of shaping themselves to appeal to men. And all I'm doing is saying, hey, some men need to learn how to shape themselves to appeal to women. And the thing is, I mean, really what he and I got down to is that a lot of these techniques and the stuff you were talking about in this book from the back of the magazine, what they are is they're teaching guys how to fake a space that I just said you need to be in, right? Like, be who you are, be assertive, unapologetic about what you're into. That's sort of a bad boy vibe in a way. Like, hey, I don't give a shit, you know? Or, you know, what they call in the book peacocking, or these guys will wear ridiculous clothes and big hats and feather boas and shit. What's that showing? It shows I don't give a shit what people think of me.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit if I look goofy. And so if you pull that off with enough like self-confidence, then what it means is you actually don't give a shit. But what they're doing is they're faking it till they make it.
Yes, and this is the thing is, I mean, I believe that we can learn an authentic way of expressing ourselves that speaks to who we are, and it's going to be different from your average, super relaxed, confident dude that got laid when he was 12.
Right.
But there'll be your own version and your own story, and you will can attract mates, lovers, whatever, accordingly. That will be, and then you'll get you'll get your match in that sense too.
Yeah.
As opposed to you fluff your feathers and pretend you're something that you're not.
Right.
What comes your way is something that you're not as well.
Exactly.
And quite often that relationship doesn't work, or only works temporarily. Or
the problem is, like, because our culture is so sex negative, and a lot of young men don't have an older male figure who can teach them how to do these things. So it's messed up, because you should be learning these things when you're 13, 14, 15, like how to deal with girls and all that. And if you're not learning it till you're in your 20s, then you've accumulated lots of frustration, lots of shame,
fear.
Lots of anger, lots of fear, and your like hunger is overwhelming, and it's really hard. It's like, what's the metaphor? It's like trying to fix an airplane while it's flying. It's hard to like work this stuff out when like you're already in the game. You're already like, it already really matters. Yeah. It's not like getting ready before you go out. Yeah. You're already out and you're trying to get ready. So I think a lot of young men and women are in a really hard spot. Yeah.
I don't think it's easy. I don't think it's easy to live as your authentic self for most people. For a lot of people who have had practice, or I mean, for you and I, April, I don't think that we identify as that now, but we haven't always been living that. Just like, I was given forced hand jobs at 13, so where I wasn't speaking my mind or my truth, because I didn't even know what that was.
I was just watching a movie on the Unabomber, and he was a 53-year-old virgin, and part of the reason he started blowing up people, obviously there was a whole another section of it, but he always wanted to find love, and he was rejected by women because he was so socially awkward. His IQ was 163. I mean, he was a literal genius. And he could have probably done really remarkable things, but he could never get laid because he was socially inept in that department.
Well, I just wrote, there's a whole section in Civilized to Death about jihadis and the relation between sexual frustration and the jihadi movement, and also mass shootings in the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
So many of those guys were lashing out.
Rape in India. When I've traveled through India, when you've traveled through India, I mean, it's every single man acts like a 14-year-old pubescent boy.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. And I'll literally be on the beach in pretty much full dress down to my ankles, but people walk up and want to take pictures just because my shoulders are exposed. Or they follow you around. It's like 14-year-old boys because they are so, I mean, it's pretty sexually oppressed.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and there's a great paper by James Prescott, which I reference in Sex at Dawn and also in Civilized to Death, where he looked at the relation between adolescent sexual expression and how long the mother was in bodily contact with infants. So on one side looking at that, and then on the other looking at violence in societies. And he studied all the societies that had data on those points and found that of the 27 societies that he studied, 26 of them had a strong correlation between repressed sexual expression in adolescence and restricted mother-infant contact and high violence.
Whoa.
It all comes back to the parents, to the upbringing. I mean,
I'm not having kids, I'm just going to get a dog.
You better touch it a lot. You better snuggle it. Tell it's beautiful. Touch it consensually. Chris and I talked about this. We're like, is bestiality consensual? I don't know.
Wait a second. I know. That's like the best story ever, though, when the cat story.
Oh, you've seen my video.
Well, because she came and was like, you have to see this. I was dying. I've showed probably about 5 people. Video. Like the video with the cartoon going along with what you're, oh my God, I was dying.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
How do people watch it? Where do they find it?
Oh, it's online. It's called 9.5 Lives, I guess. Is that right? 9.5 Lives? Yeah, 9.5 Lives.
Yeah, it's an anime video of an actual experience that you had when you were younger.
Yeah.
You were 8 or something?
I think so.
With a pencil?
Something like that, yeah.
We'll leave you at that, everyone. Go Google it.
Go Google it. It's amazing.
First pussy I ever had.
It was a furry one. Wait, can I just have you reiterate what you tell men? You tell them to find what they're
Non-negotiables, and then don't negotiate.
and just stick to that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, especially on this monogamy issue, I think is a big question. You know, I think that should be one of the things that people should talk about right up there with, do you want kids?
Values, yeah, deal breakers.
We've talked about that on our podcast before with the divine masculine, our core value system.
Core values, that's what it was, and that the core values stay pretty consistent.
Non-negotiable.
They're non-negotiables,
and if they're different between partners, then it's probably time to either move on, because those are non-negotiable
and really important to convey early on if you're trying to build something with someone, because you put on all kinds of fancy bells and whistles for those non-negotiables, it's going to bite you in the ass at some point, or it's going to hurt someone.
After you've wasted a big part of your life.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe now there are kids involved.
Well, that's been me with children. I've never really wanted children, and every person that I've dated or married until now has, like, children have been a huge part of that. Always thinking they could change me in that, in respects to that.
No, I think it's really important that, and the other thing for men, and probably women don't, it doesn't apply to them as much, but I think a lot of young men confuse a woman being attractive with, like, that being a woman you want to have a relationship with.
Right.
I think you got to get past that.
Yeah.
You got to, like, you know, the fact that you like the way someone looks doesn't mean you're gonna enjoy her company.
My deal breaker is they have to have a sense of humor and be funny, make me laugh. That's like my number one before looks or how much income. Those are the topical things that I don't really care about as much, but
I need big
and
brains.
they have to be intelligent.
Yeah.
On some level.
I just want to teach.
Not necessarily
teaches me and pushes
book smart, but just teaches you something.
And that evolves too, because if you would have dated me when I was 20, I wasn't like, I really desire someone that is really was brilliant. And now in my 30s, that's really, really important to me. And again, sticking back to the negotiables, and then also, you know, who are we? What's important to us? And then who are we interested in that can match that, and putting that out there as opposed to putting on a fancy show of something else. Because if you're really intelligent and deep down you really like intelligence, but you're attracted to the hot woman who maybe doesn't, and there's plenty of intelligent hot women, but who doesn't have that intelligence and that you're desiring, I mean, you're going to fool yourself for a little while, but it's going to catch up with you.
Yeah, and if all you're looking for is a sexual friendship, then be honest about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't lie,
and
you know, because she's looking for a boyfriend. Sure, I'll be your boyfriend. You know, even though you know it's going to last a couple months and you'll move on. So I mean, because I think the problem is people feel diminished. They feel like they're trading a little piece of their honor to get laid, and that just weakens you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the wrong direction. You want to be getting stronger with time. So, you know, you're much better off being friends with someone you're attracted to, and you know it's not sexually, you're not offering what she is asking for. You're much better off walking away from that, because then she'll tell her friends how cool you are.
Yeah.
And then it'll work out.
Yeah.
But so I guess, you know, a lot of it is guys are playing the short game, and I try to get them to see that they need to play the long game.
Yeah. Well, I think your story of when you started, you're doing your research on the non-monogamy and how it kind of filtered out the women that were on a similar path as you, is that when we are, you know, in our life's purpose, or in our purpose with our non-negotiables and whatever that is, when we're being truly in our truth and that authenticity, living that and projecting that the right people come to us, and we filter out the ones that won't. I think that's wonderful. Just a lot of people have not been raised to see that the world so clearly, or to see it that it's safe to be them.
Well, and people are afraid to be alone, and I think that's a big issue. I spent a lot of my younger years alone, you know, traveling, sitting in a cafe in, you know, Thailand, you know, by myself, you know, and like I think it's really useful to be comfortable by yourself, because so many people are grasping at relationships like, you know, grasping at straws when they're drowning. It's like, you know, people are so desperately afraid to just be alone with themselves. And I think it's getting worse now. Everyone's looking at their phones all the time. Like, no one knows how to just fucking stand still and like look around. Is that a leaf blower?
Yeah, it's a leaf blower.
My landlord walked up. We're recording in my kitchen, and my landlord walked up. I was like, "No, don't knock and chat." He's like the classic Three's Company landlord, where he just shows up and wants to chat and has an hour chat. And love him long time.
Now
but
he's blowing some leaves.
now he's blowing some things.
Leaf blowing I never understood.
It's actually illegal in most parts of California to leaf blow because it's nonsensical.
It doesn't make any sense.
It just blows the stuff in another direction. Anyway, that's a real.
I've never heard leaf blow used as a verb. That's good.
Leaf blow.
I told you not to leaf blow here.
Why are you leaf blowing?
We're trying to record here.
You're a leaf blowing son of a bitch. Yeah, in LA, I've done, you know, I've been interviewed for documentaries and stuff, and there are guys who will drive around when they see the camera trucks, they'll start leaf blowing.
Really? Just
because they know you're recording in there.
Just trying to mess it, yeah.
And someone will come out and like give them $50 to leave.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I don't have 50 right now.
We need the opposite now to stop the blowing, but it's
well.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how long your thing goes. We're 120 in.
Oh yeah, we can wrap it up soon since we're getting the leaf blower going on here as well.
I want to.
Jesus, it's getting louder by the second.
Ask a question. I'm struggling with this kind of internal issue between a really good friend of mine who is seeing this guy who she says that they're exclusive, but they're just sleeping together. And she's like, we're not sleeping with anyone else, but I know that he is sleeping with other folks. And I question why he wouldn't just say to her, and why wouldn't you just say, I know that you don't want a relationship with this person, and I struggle with this all the time. And I'm like, hey, maybe you should just explore other people too, because I know he is. But she's convinced that it's an exclusive sleeping situation. And I just struggle with, why wouldn't this person have integrity enough?
Because he thinks he won't get laid.
But he is getting laid on all
but
different...
he thinks that she'll stop, by that person, if he's authentic, he'll stop getting laid.
It drives me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this is the common thing.
Do you end up questioning, because I question his integrity on all levels.
When you see that, now that you see that.
Because he's lying about that, so why wouldn't he lie about so many other things?
Well, people can struggle in certain departments of their life based on their conditioning, and it doesn't have to reflect on who they are, their overall character. Or their integrity in general and the way they treat everything in business.
One lie spins so many other lies, though.
Yeah, but there's something about sexuality, and if I'm fully honest with what I desire as I blow these leaves, God, I think so bad, that I might lose the love. It all comes down to I might lose the love, but in that case, the love is probably just sex. And, and if I'm fully honest, then I'm going to lose it. She's not going to want me.
And I obviously...
All women want monogamy. That's a common belief, too, is that all... women want they want that knight in shining armor and that picket fence. They want to get married. They want to have babies. And I mean, a lot of people believe that. And so they want to put on the show so that they can still have their cake and eat it too.
Well, because he disappears on a regular, and she'll text him and not hear from him for a few days. And I know that he's shacked up in a hotel room with a chick. And it's hard for me to stay neutral.
And there are chances that if this person was honest, that she'd still sleep with him. That they could come to a deeper place of connection now that they have a more clear understanding. Their sex could be more connected once she feels safer because to me, the system knows when someone's not being honest. Even if you believe them here in your head, the heart, the body, the gut, deep down, this shift can happen. You can pick up on the energy of, you know when you hear friends are like, oh my God, I found out that he'd been cheating on me for years and I had no idea. I'm like, your body knew.
You knew.
Yeah. Right. Your mind didn't want to believe it, and I don't blame it for conceptualizing whatever it wanted to do, but the body knows, and the body reacts, and then it shifts in its response in regards to how it can feel safe, into the orgasms it can have, the connection we can have emotionally, energetically, physically.
Trust your intuition.
Trust your intuition. Yeah, really trust it. And and that was my tangent on that. If people are authentic, they might find that they can actually get what they want and have deeper connection with that. Yeah. And they might lose some too, but you're going to lose the ones that weren't right for you anyways, because they didn't fit with how you're living.
I get so many emails from guys saying, dude, I love your advice, makes sense, but you know, if I told women that I would never get laid and, you know, whatever. And then I get so many emails from young women saying, it makes sense, but I can't tell men that. They can't handle it.
Yeah, they won't want me.
If you people just like, if everybody stopped lying, you'd find each other.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
about the situation.
Get off your lies, fool.
Yeah.
So tell us about your book that you're writing now.
It's called Civilized to Death. I've been working on it for years, off and on. It's sort of, it got backburnered because I really got into the podcast and I really enjoy doing the podcast. And so, you know, I'd get up and say, oh, today's a writing day, except I should put out a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a part in Sex at Dawn that isn't about sex. That's sort of in the middle, maybe 50 pages about other aspects of the way people live. Because, you know, I figured you can't just write about sexual relations without writing about how they raise children and how they deal with each other politically and the sort of economics of hunter-gatherers and all that. And a lot of people wrote to me and said, you know, love the sex stuff, but I really like that stuff in the middle. I'd like to know more about that, you know? And so this book is an expansion of that. It's looking at, I mean, it was sort of inspired in a way by the Louis C.K. bit, who, where he was on an airplane and there's Wi-Fi. Have you ever seen that bit? It's really funny. There's Wi-Fi and he's like, fuck, I didn't even know there was Wi-Fi in airplanes. This is amazing. And so I'm sitting there checking my email and looking at YouTube videos, and then something happens in the...
crashes.
Yeah, crashes, and the stewardess says, sorry, we have to reset the router. It'll be a few minutes. And the guy next to me leans over and says, this is bullshit. And so he goes off on this thing about how, like, these new technological innovations only make us happy for a few minutes, and then we get used to them.
Yeah, they raise the standards, and then we get let down.
And then, like, every time it isn't well, like, this Wi-Fi is so slow. Like, geez, or my phone isn't working. He's like, it has to go to space and back, you know? Like, give it a second.
Yeah.
And he ends that bit by saying, these days everything's amazing, but nobody's happy. And so this book is, why is nobody happy if everything's amazing? What does this mean? Apparently we've been, you know, civilization, the myth of civilization is that it's all progress, that human life is getting better and better for 10,000 years now. How come suicide rates are up? How come 25% of Americans are on antidepressants? How come 40% of American boys in school are taking ADHD medication? You know, like, why is life so fucking miserable if it's been getting better for centuries?
Yeah.
What does this mean? So it's an examination of what is civilization, and how did our ancestors really live? Because we have this, what I call the Neo Hobbesian narrative, which is that life before the advent of the state was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Short, getting back to the point earlier about lifespan.
That's the belief.
That's the belief from Hobbes, right? And it's wrong on every particular. And in fact, when you look at people who have seen both ways of living, like native people who've been brought into civilization and then given the option to stay or go back, they always go back. And in fact, people who raised in civilization who've been kidnapped by the Indians, and, you know, so many cases of women in the frontier American history who, you know, the Indians came and killed the men and dragged them off and all that. A year or two later, they get rescued.
They don't want to.
They're like, you know, first nightfall, they sneak back into the woods and go back to the Indians. The fact is that civilizational life sucks, but we're all so propagandized to believe that it's better that it's really hard for people to wrap their heads around it. But they know in their bodies that they're not happy, right? Our bodies aren't healthy, our relationships aren't healthy, our kids are miserable. The whole thing is a mess, and we can see that it's a mess, but somehow, you know, there's this cognitive dissonance because the propaganda, the advertising for civilization is so overwhelming. So that's what the book's about. It's sort of, first of all, it's questioning that propaganda and the narrative that we've been fed. And then the second part is sort of what can we apply from a more accurate understanding of prehistory to our modern lives to make life better.
And you're writing it now. You don't have an ETA when it's...
It'll probably be out this fall.
Oh,
Fall 2018.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm excited.
I'll pick up that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yay.
Fuck society. Just kidding. Civilization.
I can understand it though.
Yeah.
I feel that way a lot. When I get in nature for many days in a row,
Oh
I
my
don't want to go
God.
back to,
Yeah.
especially beach nature, when I'm on the beach in the Caribbean.
Yeah, water is an important part. In Japan, they call it nature bathing.
Yes.
And there are special parks where people go to nature bathe. And there's lots of research on it that shows anxiety levels drop precipitously. People sleep better, they get more work done, they're happier in every level. And water, either shoreline or fountains and waterfalls, is an important part of it. But there's so much. I mean, you know, a lot of it, like people are like, well, you know, what's natural? You know, we can adapt to everything. Like, yeah, okay, we can adapt to everything, but how many hours do you sleep per night? You can't just decide to sleep 3 hours per night or not to sleep. You know, I sort of equate it with, like, you know, there's fucked up high-heeled shoes that women wear sometimes.
That April wears all the time. Except for right now.
Not right now.
Well, actually, right now, you've got shoes on that come to a point.
Yes.
Your foot is not shaped like that.
Well, the point though, my foot kind
And
of
it
is.
might be by now, yeah.
April doesn't mind hurting for fashion. And
I do.
Yeah.
yeah, she does.
Fashion.
Yeah. Well, see, so that's how I look at it. It's like we've got a society that's like a shoe designed by someone who isn't really thinking about feet or the way we walk. And so we end up like with fucked up backs and knees, and our toes are all twisted. And
Everything with your feet, you're like...
I know. I'm probably going to be like Prince and get hip replacement surgery when I'm 40 because of all my dance moves and high heels.
yeah.
Go barefoot, yeah.
Dancing in high heels.
Go barefoot. Yeah.
Yeah, your shoe is a metaphor for what's wrong with society.
Well,
Every time you wear the shoes, and it'd be like, yep,
Shoes.
think of society right now.
I know. It's true.
Yeah, and we live in a zoo. We're the only species that designs its own enclosures.
Yeah.
You know?
Our own cages.
And so my thesis is, look, and I'm not like, let's go back to the garden. Like that's too late. That's not going to happen. But let's live in the San Diego Zoo. Right?
Was the one where it's all open,
Yeah,
right? You have the open
right.
fields, like the safari animals can actually just roam.
Right now we're in the fucking
free-ish.
Calcutta Zoo. We're
Yeah.
like in cages throwing our shit at the wall. Like let's,
Yeah.
we can design this better. But to do that, you need to know what kind of animal you've got there.
That you are that animal in a cage
Right.
too. I mean, a lot of people don't even think of it. They think that they're free when they're not.
Right.
And because they've never questioned that, nothing's ever inspired them to think beyond what they know.
So I'm hoping what I'll have, my favorite reaction to Sex at Dawn are the people who said, thank you, you lifted all the shame off
Yeah.
me.
You're the shame exorcist.
I'm the sham
Yeah.
exorcist, right? So I hope to do more of that with this book, but in terms, not just in sex, but in terms of like, because I think there are a lot of people who are winning, they're making money, they got the wife and the 2 kids and the Audi, and they got it, it's all like all the boxes are checked.
And they're still
and they're
heavily
fucking
medicated.
miserable.
Yeah, they're taking Xanax to survive the
Right.
day, or the night, and Adderall for the day. And
Right. And so I hope those people will, find this book and like, oh, I get it. That's why I'm unhappy.
Or they
Yeah.
go to some beautiful country and stay in a resort and don't even get out.
they don't even get to
that
see the
drives me
culture.
crazy. I'm like, I don't want anything touristic in my own trips. I want to go into nature. That's what I'm desiring.
Live
right
like
now,
the
actually.
people.
Live with the people. Yes.
Get a van. I
Go-
spent 6 weeks this summer living in the van.
I love
what'd you
that.
call it?
Right.
The van.
Vanthropology 2017.
He's a vanthropologist.
Vanthropologist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cruising around
That's
town.
great. We have to have you back on the show again. You're
Whoa.
such a joy. I learned stuff. I love learning things. So thank
We
you.
can record it in the van, driving down the road.
Let's do it.
I'll bring the
Is
lead
that
blower.
safe?
No,
No.
I've done some recordings in the van,
No, while driving.
but yeah.
Oh, really?
Well, because you're just talking.
Aren't there people that
I mean,
podcast in a sauna? Who is that?
Neil.
Yeah, Neil.
I did the
Oh, yeah.
podcast
He
in the
did.
Truth
How
Barrel
does that work?
You were in the
Judy?
sauna
with
for an
Neil
hour, right?
and Gabby Reese.
Yeah.
Laird
Oh, I
Hamilton's
love
wife.
Gabby
Yeah.
Reese.
Yeah. That's awesome.
What about the
How?
equipment though? Isn't that dangerous for the equipment?
Yeah, they've got most of it outside,
Okay.
and they just run mic
Run the
wires
mics
in.
cool.
Through. The wires can handle it.
Yeah, I guess they replace the mics pretty often.
Probably.
They can
Where's that
afford
level
it.
set?
Sweaty mic.
Yeah.
Remind our listeners of, actually, we didn't even say your website, but how they can find your podcast, what the name of your podcast, and your website.
podcast is called Tangentially Speaking. It's available
iTunes,
where
Google Play.
podcasts are found.
Yeah, everywhere.
And my website is chrisryanphd.com.
Nice.
That's it.
That's easy.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much for making this time to visit us in Santa Cruz.
No, thank you. Amy said
Sure.
such great things about you. Kyle did too. So it's such a pleasure to have you in my home.
Oh, yeah.
And the leaf,
Even
Great to be
you
here.
leaf blower and all.
leaf blowing and my landlord and all. So anytime you're in Santa Cruz, come and visit us.
I will.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.